Alright, so whenever people start yapping about 1001 Nights, everyone just automatically thinks of Shahrazad, right? You know that chick who kept telling stories for 1001 nights straight, just to keep this mean sultan from chopping her head off. But, has anyone ever stopped to wonder who Shahrazad actually was? That's a whole other wild story, man. Anyway, let's get down to how this girl managed to keep herself alive with her killer storytelling skills. There were these two brothers, Shah Zaman and Shahryar, sons of a king in India and China. Both were smart, strong, and all-around awesome. Their dad made sure they got the best education and training, so everyone knew who they were. Shah Zaman, the older bro, was the king of Samarkand, and Shahryar was the king of India and China. They both ruled for 20 years after their dad kicked the bucket, but even though they looked like they had it all together, they were both kind of sucky at running their own households. One day, Shah Zaman got homesick and decided to visit his brother. So he told his main dude, the vizier, to take care of things while he was gone, and to get a royal trip ready. 2 days later, he was off to see Shahryar. They were on the road when Shah Zaman realized he forgot the super expensive gift he got for his brother. To avoid looking like a forgetful doofus, he waited till everyone was asleep and snuck back to the palace with a couple of his buddies. He went to his bedroom, and guess what? He caught his wife getting busy with another dude. He totally lost it, pulled out his sword, and chopped them both up. Then, all bummed out, he grabbed the gift and headed back to camp. He didn't say a word to anyone the whole way to India and China. He was just hoping to see his brother and feel a little better. When he finally got there, Shahryar threw a huge party, but he could tell his brother was still bummed. Shahryar figured he was just tired from the trip, so he let him chill for a couple of days. But when he checked on him later, Shah Zaman was still moping. He asked what was wrong, and Shah Zaman just said, "If I told you my problems, you'd be sad too." He asked Shahryar to set up a hunting trip to take his mind off things. Shahryar was like, "Dude, I was hoping you'd be happy to see me. What's going on?" But Shah Zaman just said, "Let's go hunting, maybe that'll help." They set up a big hunting trip, but when Shahryar went to get his brother, he found him sick in bed. Shah Zaman told him to go without him, and said he'd catch up later. The next morning, Shah Zaman peeked out his window and saw Shahryar's whole harem having a wild party in the garden. He was like, "Man, my wife was bad, but this is a whole new level of messed up." He was so shocked that he passed out. When Shahryar got back from hunting, he found his brother sick and asked what was wrong. Shah Zaman finally told him about his wife and what he saw in the garden. Shahryar was all, "Dude, I'm sorry about your wife, but I don't believe my harem would do that." Shah Zaman was like, "I saw it with my own eyes. Let's pretend you're going on another hunting trip and see what happens." So they pretended to leave, but they hid and watched. Sure enough, the harem started partying again. Shahryar was so mad he started crying and asked his brother what to do. Shah Zaman said, "You can either kill them all or forget about it." Shahryar was like, "Or we could just ditch this whole king thing and live in the desert." So that's what they did. They wandered around until they got to the ocean and found a genie with a hot chick in a box. The genie fell asleep, and the chick started counting her rings. Turns out she'd been cheating on the genie with a ton of dudes and kept their rings as trophies. The brothers were disgusted and decided to go back to their kingdoms. Shahryar killed his whole harem and started marrying a new girl every night and killing her in the morning. That's when Shahrazad stepped in and started telling her stories. Alright, so they lit up the whole town, decked out the doors with rugs and flowers, and Shahryar himself, with a whole crew of nobles and ministers, went to greet his brother Shah Zaman. Little did they know, Shah Zaman was carrying a whole lot of pain and grief. Shah Zaman hugged his brother tight and showered him with kisses, but Shahryar could tell something was off. After 20 years apart, his brother didn't seem as excited as he should have been. Shahryar knew his brother well, but he couldn't see that spark of joy in his eyes. He figured Shah Zaman was just tired from the long journey, so he took him straight to a fancy palace to rest. He gave him 2 days to chill and recover, but on the third morning, Shah Zaman was still all gloomy. Shahryar couldn't take it anymore and asked his brother what was bugging him. Shah Zaman replied with this line, "If I start telling my troubles, everyone's gonna be bummed." Then he said, "Bro, to shake off this gloom, how about we go on a hunting trip for a few days? Maybe that'll bring back my smile. I hate that you see me like this after 20 years. Shahryar was like, "Man, I was hoping to see you happy, not all sad. Why don't you spill the beans? Maybe I can help." But Shah Zaman just said, "Just set up that hunting trip, maybe some fresh air will do the trick." So they planned a big hunting trip, and when Shahryar went to pick up his brother, he found him sick in bed. Shah Zaman told him, "Don't change the plans. You go ahead, and I'll catch up tomorrow with the guide. And don't tell anyone in the palace, let him sleep. I'll ask for whatever I need in the morning." Shahryar listened to his brother and went hunting with his crew. The next morning, Shah Zaman peeked out his window and saw the whole harem of Shahryar's palace having a wild party in the garden. He was like, "Man, my wife was bad, but this is a whole new level of messed up." He was so shocked that he passed out. When Shahryar got back from hunting, he found his brother sick and asked what was wrong. Shah Zaman finally told him about his wife and what he saw in the garden. Shahryar asked his brother, "But why did your sickness get worse when you came to my palace? You endured 2 weeks of travel with this pain. What made it worse? The same old grief? Or?" That's when Shah Zaman spilled the beans about what he saw in broad daylight by the pool. "If I was upset about one woman's betrayal in the dark, I saw all your harem in the daylight, messing around by the pool." Shahryar, after hearing about his brother's wife and his own harem, said, "I'm sorry about what happened in your palace, and I'm glad you took care of those traitors. But I can't believe my whole harem would do that in the daylight. You sure you didn't see things wrong? If you weren't my brother, I wouldn't even let you say that. Someone else would be dead right now. How could my whole harem be cheaters?" "No way, bro, you're sick and seeing things." Shah Zaman said, "I ain't crazy. My window looks into your harem's yard. I can see a sparrow on a tree right now. How could I be wrong? I got a plan." "Announce a long hunting trip," Shahryar interrupted. "What's that gonna prove?" Shah Zaman said, "We'll tell everyone we're leaving, send the servants ahead, but we'll hide and watch." "I bet they'll do it again," Shahryar said. "I trust my women, but I'll do it for you." So Shahryar announced a long hunting trip, but they hid. Not long after, the harem started partying by the pool again. Shahryar was shocked and started crying, asking his brother what to do. Shah Zaman said, "Either kill them all or forget it." Shahryar said, "There's a third way. We leave. Let's ditch this kingdom and live in the desert." So they snuck out at night and wandered until they reached the coast. They saw a big tree with a spring and sat down to rest. Suddenly, they saw a dust cloud and heard a loud noise. A giant with a box on his head appeared, opened the box, and a beautiful girl came out. All right, so here's the deal with the beautiful girl. This giant dude was head over heels for her, always looking for a chance to snatch her. He finally got his chance on her wedding night when she stepped out with her crew to get dolled up. He swooped in and grabbed her. Simple as that. So when he plopped down by the spring with the box, he told her, "I carried you all this way. I'm beat. Sit here and keep watch, wake me up if anything goes down." He crashed out, snoring like a freight train. After a few minutes, she pulled out a string with a ton of rings on it, like she was counting beads. She started counting out loud, 1, 10, 50, all the way up to 570. Then she yelled, "Man, I hope someone shows up tonight and gives me ring number 571. The princes who'd been hiding in the tree climbed down and faced her. She wasn't scared at all, just said, "Sweet, looks like I'm getting ring number 572 today. Then she invited them to sit down. She said, "Don't worry, this dude ain't waking up till tomorrow, unless something real bad happens. Like if some other giants showed up, not just a couple of princes." When the brothers saw how much she hated the giant, they asked why she didn't just run. She shook her head and said, "He's a real monster. He put a spell on me, hid my life force somewhere, and I don't know where. Nothing can hurt him unless he's awake. If he wakes up and I'm gone, he'll find me, no matter how far I go, and make me pay. I tried to escape once, but it just made things worse. I'm stuck with him for good." The girl, still holding the ring string, saw the brothers were curious and started telling her story. "I was a spoiled rich girl, had tons of guys chasing me. I loved playing them, drove a lot of them crazy. One guy, a sweet kid, killed himself. His mom cursed me, said she hoped a monster would snatch me and make me suffer. And wouldn't you know it, this giant fell for me. I was so scared I said yes to the first guy who asked me. But on my wedding night, this giant grabbed me, put a spell on me, and hid my life force somewhere in a cave. He goes there sometimes, but I don't know where it is. I've been stuck with this dude for 5 years now. I know I deserve it for breaking all those hearts, but I'm still gonna get my revenge." The brothers were like, "How are you gonna get revenge on a giant who's got you locked up?" The girl said, "This dude sleeps like a rock. He won't wake up till tomorrow unless I stick a twig in his ear. But I get my revenge by messing around with other guys while he's asleep. Every time, I get a ring as a souvenir. Like you saw, I got 570 rings and I'm hoping to get 2 more from you." The brothers were so disgusted, they couldn't stand being there anymore. As they walked away, Shahryar said to Shah Zaman, "Man, after hearing about this girl, our problems ain't nothing compared to that giant's. I'm going back to my kingdom to deal with those traitors. What about you? You coming back to Samarkand or staying with me?" Shah Zaman said, "Neither. I'm gonna live a simple life, spend my days praying. Maybe this all happened 'cause of my past mistakes. I'm done with power. I'm going my own way." And so, the brothers parted ways. Shah Zaman kept walking, and Shahryar headed back to his kingdom. When he passed the tree again, the giant was still snoozing, and the girl was still counting her rings. When Shahryar got back to his palace, he gathered all the traitors and had them executed. He then threw their bodies to the dogs and put their heads on display. That was just the first part of his revenge. Shahryar's second revenge was way worse than the first one. He ordered a beautiful girl to be brought to him every night, married her, and then had her head chopped off before sunrise. This went on for 3 years, with over 1,000 girls losing their heads. There wasn't a family in the city that hadn't lost a daughter to Shahryar's crazy revenge. Eventually, there were no more girls left in the city. When Shahryar found out, he called his vizier and ordered him to find a virgin girl for the next night, no matter what. Shahryar said, "I've been told the girl I'm marrying today is the last one in the city. I'm telling you, either you bring me a girl tomorrow or you're going to lose your head." The vizier went home, all sad and worried, and sat down on his doorstep, burying his face in his hands. His daughter came up to him. Shahryar's vizier had 2 daughters, Scheherazade and Dunyazad. Scheherazade, the older one, was her dad's confidant. When she saw him all sad and teary-eyed, she said, "Dad, I know why you're upset. I'm a girl in this city too, and the only reason I haven't lost my head yet is because I'm the vizier's daughter. I know everything. In the past 3 years, everyone who could leave has left. Now I'm begging you, let me marry Shahryar tomorrow. If you don't, that crazy king will come after me, Dunyazad, and the few girls left in the army commanders' houses. Please, let me marry him. Either I'll end up like the other girls, or I'll save the rest of them." Tears streamed down the vizier's face. He never thought he'd have to give his own daughter to the executioner. No matter how much he begged, Scheherazade wouldn't change her mind. Finally, he said, "Honey, I'm afraid you'll end up like the donkey who tried to give advice to a farmer." Scheherazade said, "Dad, I ain't changing my mind, but I'd love to hear that story you're talking about." So the vizier started telling her the story. Once upon a time, there was this farmer who was super rich. He had tons of sheep, orchards full of fruit, and fields full of crops. He also had a stable with a cow and a donkey. Now this farmer had a special talent. He could understand animal language. One night, he snuck into the stable and overheard the cow and the donkey talking. The cow was standing by the donkey's feed trough, looking jealous. He said, "Man, you got it good. I'm working my butt off all day, plowing fields and turning the millstone. The boss is killing me. But you just give him a ride to the fields and back, and that's it. You don't know what it's like to be tired." The donkey said, "Well, if you're so tired, tomorrow when they put the harness on you, just lie down and don't move. Don't eat your food either. After a couple of days, they'll leave you alone." So the next morning, the farmer went to the stable and saw the cow playing sick. He put the harness on the donkey instead and made him work twice as hard. The donkey came back to the stable all tired and beat and said, "Man, I wish I hadn't given you that advice. I just heard the boss telling his friend he's going to sell the cow to the butcher tomorrow, 'cause the donkey can do all the work now. So that's why I'm telling you this story, honey. I don't want your kindness to end up like the donkey's, making things worse for everyone." Scheherazade said, "Dad, that's a good story, but it ain't going to happen to me. I know I can do this, and besides, you don't have a choice. If you don't get me to the king tonight, they'll force you to tomorrow." The vizier knew he couldn't change her mind, and he also knew there were no other girls left in the city. Plus, he trusted Scheherazade's smarts and knew she had a plan. So he put on his best clothes and went to the palace. Shahryar was surprised to see him back so soon and asked, "Did you find a girl for me?" The vizier said, "Yes." Back at the vizier's house, Scheherazade and Dunyazad talked for hours, and they both seemed happy and content when they parted ways. The next afternoon, Scheherazade was taken to the palace, they got married, and when the wedding night was over and there was still some time left before sunrise, Scheherazade said to Shahryar, "King, can I ask you something before I lose my head?" The king said, "Anything but forgiveness, till sunrise." Scheherazade said, "I just want to see my sister Dunyazad one last time." The king agreed and sent for Dunyazad. Dunyazad, who'd already talked to her sister, rushed into the room. Scheherazade, who was a smart and well-read girl and knew a lot of old stories, had told Dunyazad to pretend to cry and then say, "Sis, that story you told me last night, you didn't finish it. If you have a few minutes, can you finish it for me?" And so Scheherazade, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, started telling her sister the story of the merchant and the genie, making sure Shahryar was listening too. Scheherazade, trying to make it sound like she was Russian because she didn't have much time, talked so fast sometimes that Shahryar couldn't understand her. But the act worked. When Dunyazad said goodbye and left, Shahryar said to Scheherazade, "Even though I only heard the end of the story, it was interesting. I want to hear it from the beginning. I love old stories, and I've never heard anyone tell them as good as you. But it's almost sunrise, so tell me the story of the merchant and the genie tomorrow night." Then he clapped his hands, the guard came in, and Shahryar told him, "We don't need the executioner tonight, he can go."